GT Countdown. Top 10 Game Creators.
Unlike illustrious film directors, famous playwrights, and celebrated authors, video game auteurs often go unrecognized for the tremendous amount of influence they've had on their industry and entertainment at large. Without the following 10 geniuses, some of your favorite genres would cease to exist, or perhaps have been cobbled together years after the business was begging for a pivotal change. While it can sometimes be unclear who is directly responsible for creating a game, the impact these imaginative minds have had on our lives cannot be quantified.
Number 10. Peter Molyneux.
Long before the famed mastermind made his splash, Molyneux sold and distributed floppy disks for both the Atari and Commodore 64. It was a humble beginning, but the intentions of this intrepid pioneer far exceeded simple measures. Molyneux founded multiple companies and is best known for being the creative designer of such hits as Dungeon Keeper, Populous, Black and White, and Fable.
Oh my life!
Molyneux's overzealous habit of making lofty promises during their production has put him in tight spots, but at the very least, the man knows how to generate some serious hype. Some call him arrogant, others call him brilliant, but no one can argue his influence and achievements.
Yeah! Number 9. Keiji Inafune.
They say a picture is worth 1,000 words, but for Keiji Inafune, it's worth untold hours of nostalgic gaming bliss. With his imaginative penciling and distinctly colorful style, Inafune's designs have given birth to some of the most iconic figures in and out of the side-scroller, laying the early foundation for the gaming giant we'd come to know as Capcom. Today, the man behind the Mega has stretched his fingers past the Power Glove and into the realm of R&D, with modern hits like Onimusha, Lost Planet, and Dead Rising. But even with all his recent success, Inafune still holds a place near and dear to many as the creator of the Blue Bomber. The millions of fans are a testament to his living legacy.
Number 8. Hironobu Sakaguchi.
From Dungeons & Dragons to the wonderful world of steampunk, the console role-playing game has seen some notable contributions from a number of visionaries. But none could ever come close to the progenitor of Phoenix Downs, Hironobu Sakaguchi. During his 13-year tenure at Squaresoft, Sakaguchi laid the tenets of what would eventually be known the world over as the JRPG, all while establishing one of the most seminal franchises in video game history. His sheer influence is unquestionable, and for many, his games go down as some of the best in the genre. Sakaguchi has worn a number of hats over the years, but lately, it's been president of his own development studio, Mistwalker. Even though he's made his final farewells to the company that made him, it's impossible to forget the fantasy that transformed Sakaguchi into a household name.
Who would be next?
Number 7. Gunpei Yokoi.
Few game industry icons can match the impressive creative output of Nintendo's Gunpei Yokoi. The former maintenance engineer moved from developing toys like the extending Ultra Hand to the early Game & Watch handhelds, where he implemented one of his most influential inventions, the D-pad. Yokoi also acted as the general manager at Nintendo's R&D 1 group, which produced some of Miyamoto's earliest titles, as well as NES classics like Fire Emblem, Kid Icarus, and his baby hatchling, Metroid. He also created the lovable, if not incredibly useful, Rob. It's an impressive resume, but the creation of the original Game Boy is without question the highlight of Yokoi's work. Considering his accomplishments, we can easily overlook the Virtual Boy, even though it forced him to abruptly end his career. While a fatal traffic accident cut Yokoi's life tragically short, he posthumously received a well-deserved Lifetime Achievement honor at the Game Developers' Choice Awards in 2003.
Number 6. Warren Spector.
With a name fit for a secret agent, Mr. Spector has enjoyed the life of an exemplifying game designer. He cut his teeth on graph paper working on analog games like GURPS and Dungeons & Dragons, before making the jump to the digital domain. There, he penned production in the Ultima series, including Ultima Underworld, an early 3D dungeon romp predating Wolfenstein 3D. And then there's its sci-fi twin System Shock, which begot BioShock, if unofficially. His trailblazing would continue with stints on the stealth masterpiece Thief and the liquid narrative cyber shooter Deus Ex. He's been a staunch defender of story in games, making it a main course, not dessert, and has constantly pushed technology forward. His current whereabouts are somewhere deep in the Disney compound, since his latest company, Junction Point, was purchased in 2007. Our fingers are crossed for a Mickey Mouse Super Ninja game.
Number 5. Shinji Mikami.
You really only need 2 words to sum up Shinji Mikami's creative power.
Resident Evil.
While he started at Capcom as a planner for licensed Disney titles, including the admittedly cool SNES version of Aladdin, Mikami went from cute to creepy when he directed the horrifying original RE. The tense and atmospheric first entry in the series became one of the PlayStation's earliest blockbusters, and coined the term survival horror. Mikami also acted as executive producer for acclaimed Capcom titles, including the original Devil May Cry and Beautiful Joe. He was also the driving force behind the legendary Resident Evil 4. He eventually struck out on his own under the banner of Clover Studios to create the cult favorite brawler, God Hand. Mikami is currently a part of the new Platinum Games label, and is collaborating with Suda51 on a new big-budget project for mega publisher Electronic Arts.
Number 4. Hideo Kojima.
Although he didn't actually invent stealth action, Hideo Kojima put the genre on the map with the 1998 release of Metal Gear Solid, after already dominating the MSX library with the first 2 Solid Snake missions. But MGS forced players to put down their controllers and actually listen to what Kojima's characters had to say, dishing out the engrossing narrative that would come to define the Solid moniker. Kojima was also responsible for the 1988 cult classic Snatcher, the fighting mech series Zone of the Enders, and the innovative Boktai. But it was clearly Metal Gear that made Kojima a force to be reckoned with, thanks equally to its innovative gameplay and focus on the characters. His games can be polarizing, but there's no denying the man has style.
Number 3. John Carmack.
Androids may dream of electronic sheep, but Carmack dreams in assembly code. His laundry list of achievements include figuring out how to reproduce scrolling on PCs with something called adaptive tile refresh, mastering raycasting for Wolfenstein 3D, binary space partitioning for Doom, and surface caching for Quake, as well as shooting some rockets into low orbit. These tech terms may not exactly ring, but their ripples have been immeasurable, like creating the first-person shooter. And the guy is still going, working on the Rage engine, filled with mega textures and locking himself in hotel rooms for 48 hours to emerge with 3D engines for cell phones. A savant of sorts, each year at QuakeCon he appears to talk about the latest tech and take questions from the fans, making him one of the most approachable gaming gods on this list.
Number 2. Will Wright.
It's one thing to make a game, another to make a genre, and yet another to make genres that make new games encompassing new genres. Breaking into the industry in 1984 with Raid on Bungling Bay, Will Wright formed Maxis with Jeff Braun a year later and built SimCity in 1989. The PC hit grew through generations of sequels, and Wright's focus dropped even further into the urban landscape to create the biggest PC game ever. His garble-mouthed society would eventually get pets, go shopping, seek out countless careers, and venture online. The Sims destroyed the concept of finishing a game, and still has players generating alter egos. Wright's newest experiment, Spore, could only have been dreamt up by this ruler of the cyberpsyche, a mind that constantly seeks to make the impossible playable.
Number 1. Shigeru Miyamoto.
Call it obvious or a cliche, but there's no doubt that Shigeru Miyamoto is the most influential game creator in history. In the early 80s, he reinvigorated the arcade with Donkey Kong. Super Mario Bros. And The Legend of Zelda introduced all new experiences full of hidden secrets and alternate ways to progress. Miyamoto forever altered the course of 3D gaming with Super Mario 64's sense of freedom and Ocarina of Time's camera lock-on system. His ideas have led to new control schemes like the N64 analog stick, DS touchscreen, and the Wii remote, and he stood behind dozens of other Nintendo hits, giving his insights on titles like Star Fox, F-Zero, Eternal Darkness, and Metroid Prime. His inspirations range from exploring caves to gardening or taking care of a dog, and many of his life experiences have become virtual playgrounds for us to enjoy. His background in industrial design ensures that every detail serves a meaningful purpose for the player. But most importantly, he has the intangible ability to find the utter essence of joy, and then figure out a way to share it with the world.